We did a story last week about railroad tourism, talking to folks up in Elkins about trains they run up into the mountains that are supposed to be really, really pretty for the next couple of months. Today we're going to talk more about the history of trains, and I guess we got into this. Spike, some people like their Corvettes and Camaros and Chargers, and some people like their trains. So we're going to talk about trains with David Scott, who's the president of the Ritchie County Historical Society, and from what I've read, knows a lot about trains. David Scott, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me on this morning. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. It's, I think, interesting to folks to know a little bit of this background, particularly because a lot of these rail lines are now being used in a whole different way, and we'll get to that in a second. But first, let's go back to history. How did the study of the railroads there in Ritchie County and beyond pique your interest?
Oh, well, I come from a family. My grandfather worked on railroads in Randolph County back in the days of timbering and coal. And,
sure.
So I grew up hearing some stories about it, and then I just was interested in trains, just in general. And we had a lot of them here in Ritchie County that I heard about as I was growing up. So the combination there piqued my interest.
When I travel, whenever I go through a new town, a new community, one of the first things that pops into my head is, why is this town here? How did this town come about? What did people do? How did they make a living? Why did they build their home here? You indicated that in what I read, that for many Ritchie County towns, the answer is or was the railroad.
That's right. Yeah, the railroad, the B&O Railroad from Grafton to Parkersburg came through here and completed during 1856, and there were a few little communities along the Northwestern Turnpike, which later became known as Route 50.
Route 50, right.
And the Turnpike and the railroad paralleled each other, so there were a few little communities because of the Turnpike, but they were very, very small. And but when the railroad came through, that helped the development of those communities, and some others grew from people moving in, and the oil and gas industry and timber industry created these shipping points that were needed along the railroad, and little communities kind of popped up there and grew because of the industry in the area.
We're talking to David Scott, the president of the Ritchie County Historical Society, about some of the railroad lines that passed through Ritchie County years ago. Tell us about some of those industries that were facilitated by the railroad being there.
Well, one thing we forget about quite often, that with the railroad being built in 1856, it was just a few years after that the railroad helped the Union cause during the Civil War. And a lot of troops were shipped from Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, back east to fight in those larger battles. And this line from Parkersburg through to Clarksburg was very instrumental in helping the Union cause. And then, as I mentioned, after that, sometime in the 1880s, the oil and gas industry really was discovered in this area, and timbering became big, and so the railroad was instrumental in helping those industries, especially. And we had here in Ritchie County, we had about 6 or 7 different little railroads that were built out into the county to help with those industries.
I was going to ask you to mention those, because there were several, not just this B&O line, which was the major one.
Right. The first one that was of great interest was a narrow gauge railroad that was built from Cairo. Now, folks that would look on a map would pronounce it Cairo, but we say Cairo here in Ritchie County.
Right.
And it was about a 13-mile narrow gauge railroad that was built to a site where they discovered natural asphalt. And that asphalt was mined and then shipped and used to pave streets in Washington, D.C., and New York City, and even in Europe. So that was our first little railroad in Ritchie County. It was called the Calico. And then we had the Harrisville Southern that went from where North Bend State Park is now into Harrisville to help Harrisville develop. And prior to that, we had another one came into Harrisville from Pennsboro. And then we had some that were built just for the timber industry primarily, so there wasn't passenger service on those, but the others had passenger service, and it got people up out of the mud, got them quick and easy transportation, quick and easy compared to a horseback or walking, that's for sure.
Yeah, for a lot of Ritchie County residents back at that time, this was their ticket to the rest of the world, essentially.
Yes, it was. It really was, because getting to the railroad, well, first of all, the stagecoach line that went from Clarksburg to Parkersburg became obsolete immediately, and then it just made it possible for people to, once they got to the B&O line along in the different communities, then, like you said, they could go wherever they wanted to, especially eastbound.
David, we got to take a break. We're going to come back and talk some more. Okay.
Okay.
You hang on for us, and we'll be back to talk more with you, David Scott, about the Ritchie County Railroads. Back after this about River News. We'll be talking on this Tuesday morning, first day of August, with David Scott, the president of the Ritchie County Historical Society. And David, I rudely interrupted you there as we went into the break just a little bit late. Right. If you want to finish your thought on how this B&O line, particularly from Parkersburg to Grafton, enabled so many residents of the counties along that line to travel wherever they wanted.
Yes, they could. All these little railroads really helped a lot of people in the county to get to the B&O, and then that just opened up the door to whatever direction they needed to go. Primarily, it was limited to east towards Baltimore, but then in 1871, B&O built that big railroad bridge down to Parkersburg, and that tied them in with a line that went to Cincinnati and on to St. Louis.
Right.
As it developed, you could go coast to coast on railroads, and so it was quite a development, quite an advancement in transportation for everyone.
Somewhere back then, I heard that Mark Twain rode the railroad maybe from Grafton to Clarksburg, and we haven't talked about it yet, but there were a lot of tunnels, and he made some comments. Can you tell that story?
Yes. Actually, from Grafton to Parkersburg, there were 23 tunnels, and the story I heard was he was on his way from Missouri back east to visit family and went from Parkersburg across, and when he got to Grafton, his comment was that he felt like he was in the dark more than he'd been in the light. Sounds like something he would say.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got to the point where those tunnels were the term I read was daylighted. In the mid-20th century, we daylighted those tunnels. Explain that, Dave.
Well, the railroad was starting to haul freight that was stood higher off the bed of the cars, and the tunnels were not tall enough. And so some of them, they actually dug down into the tunnels and lowered the rail bed so they could still use the tunnels, but some of them, they couldn't do that, so they just blew up the tunnel and opened up the hill, and so that's where the term daylighted came from, that it was no longer dark there and daylighted.
Yeah. And
some of the tunnels are still used for the rail trail.
Oh, yeah, they're a big part of the rail trail. People love those. I want to back up a little bit again, because another anecdote that I found amusing was that back in the heyday in Ritchie County, when the railroads were helping out industry and development there, and particularly oil and gas, I guess, that Cairo supposedly had the highest per capita income in the country, and I've read that Sistersville, West Virginia, which, as you probably know, is big into oil and gas in Tyler County, not too far away, used to claim the same thing. Any acrimony over that between the two communities?
Not that I'm aware of, but they both have evidence. When you look at old photos, there's like all oil wells right in people's backyards.
Right.
I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah. I thought it was amusing that people were laying claim to.
Yes,
and I don't know about Cairo, because I don't think I've been through there, but there are some very impressive mansions as you drive down Route 2 through Sistersville. I don't know if you've seen those before, but
Yes, I have. That is very impressive.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything like that still standing that I can think of
Yeah.
offhand in Cara. So that might give Sistersville a leg up.
Well, there's definitely evidence that there was some money there at some time, because they're
Yeah.
actually very very beautiful homes. The railroad helped farmers in the Ritchie County area too, right?
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, their produce could be shipped then, to markets much further away than they ever dreamed possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an instant shot in the arm there for every industry, including farming. And of course, the livestock could be shipped back to the markets in Baltimore, which is, the business leaders of Baltimore, that was their main plan, was to get that railroad clear out into the Midwest, and so all that could come to the markets of Baltimore.
Has the Ritchie County community, now that the rail lines have disappeared, have they bought into, or are they trying to develop recreation industry through the county as this North Bend Rails to Trails is being built?
Well, the rail trail's been completed, and it's being promoted a lot. The state has helped promote it with signs along Route 50 where you can have access to the rail trail, and the North Bend State Park is adjacent to the rail trail, so they promoted a lot with rail trail activities up and down the trail, hiking and seeing the nature. And then the Historical Society, we maintain the old Pennsboro B&O Depot.
We've got about 30 seconds. I wanted you to get in something about the Pennsboro Depot.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, we've been maintaining it for about 15 years now, and information about it is available on our website, RitchieHistoricalSociety.com. And we have tours through the summer, the first and third Saturdays of the summer months. It's open from 10 until 4, and then we have phone numbers posted on our website. People can call and make an appointment for a tour.
Okay.
So we try to get it open as much as we can.
Great. RitchieHistoricalSociety.com for more information. David Scott, president of the Ritchie County Historical Society, thanks for joining us. That was good stuff.
Thank you, Gary. We appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
And hopefully you can come out and visit us sometime.
I'd like to. I come past there a good bit. I'll have to stop in.
Okay.
All right. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Patrick Kirby, the director of the Northern West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center at WVU.